What if WWE was an entertainment in the medieval era? Picture this. It's 1347. The Black Death is ravaging Europe. But in the great stone amphitheaters of castle courtyards, crowds of peasants and nobles alike are cheering wildly for their favorite champions. Instead of steel chairs and announce tables, we'd have wooden stools and ale barrels. Instead of entrance music, we'd have trumpeters and minstrels. And instead of championship belts, we'd have ornate ceremonial swords or golden chalices. The medieval WWE universe would be a fascinating blend of genuine knightly combat and theatrical spectacle. Knights would enter the arena on horseback, their armor gleaming in torchlight, banners flying with their family crests. But here's where it gets interesting. Just like modern wrestling, these medieval matches would be carefully choreographed performances designed to tell compelling stories of honor, betrayal, and redemption. Consider the characters we'd see. Instead of the Undertaker, we might have the Black Knight of Pestilence. A mysterious warrior who emerges from fog created by burning herbs, his armor as dark as a moonless night. The audience would cross themselves as he approaches, genuinely unsure whether he's mortal or something far more sinister. Stone Cold Steve Austin's equivalent might be William the Defiant, a rebellious peasant-turned-knight who refuses to bow to corrupt nobles and delivers his finishing move, the serf's rebellion, to thunderous applause from common folk in the crowd. The storylines would be epic in scope, drawing from the rich tapestry of medieval culture. Imagine feuds between Christian knights and visiting Saracen warriors. It's presented not as genuine religious warfare, but as elaborate morality plays. Crowd would boo and cheer as predetermined. But the underlying tensions would reflect real medieval anxieties about the Crusades, its foreign cultures and religious differences. These matches would serve as both entertainment and a safe way to explore contemporary fears and prejudices. But that's just the beginning of how different this medieval wrestling world would be. The very concept of kayfabe, the wrestling industry's commitment to maintaining the illusion that matches are real, would take on entirely new dimensions in an era where most people couldn't read and got their news through traveling storytellers. Medieval audiences would be far more willing to believe in the supernatural elements of wrestling storylines. When a wrestler claimed to have been blessed by a saint or cursed by a witch, the crowd wouldn't just play along. Many would genuinely wonder if it might be true. The production values would be spectacular in their own way. Instead of pyrotechnics, we'd have elaborate torch displays and controlled fires. Smoke effects would come from burning specific woods and herbs, creating not just visual drama, but aromatic experiences that would make each entrance memorable. The ring itself would be a raised wooden platform in the center of a castle-esque great hall or courtyard, surrounded by benches for nobles and standing room for commoners. The separation between social classes would be built right into the seating arrangement. Medieval wrestling would also feature female performers, but in ways that reflect the era's constraints and opportunities. Instead of traditional matches, you might see ladies of combat engaging in stylized sword and shield demonstrations, or elaborate dance battles that tell stories of legendary warrior women like Joan of Arc or the Amazons. Yes. These performances would push the boundaries of what was considered acceptable for women, while still operating within medieval social norms. The championship system would be fascinating. Rather than holding belts, champions would possess sacred relics or royal artifacts. The heavyweight championship might be represented by Charlemagne's crown, passed down through generations of worthy warriors. Winning it wouldn't just make you the top wrestler. It would make you a symbol of divine authority and royal legitimacy. The political implications would be enormous. And real nobles might actually try to influence storylines to support their own claims to power. And then things get even more interesting when we consider the economics. Medieval WWE would operate on a feudal system. Wrestlers would be bound to specific lords who sponsored them, and matches would often represent proxy conflicts between different noble houses. When Sir Roderick of Westmark faces off against Sir Baldwin the Bold, they're not just entertaining the crowd, they're allowing their respective lords to settle disputes through theatrical combat rather than actual warfare. It would be politics by other means, with predetermined outcomes that reflect real-world power negotiations happening behind the scenes. The training would be intense and authentic. These medieval wrestlers would need to master not just theatrical combat, but real weapons, skills, horsemanship, and courtly behavior. They train in monastery courtyards and castle yards, learning from actual knights and men-at-arms. The line between performance and reality would be much thinner than in modern wrestling. These entertainers would need to be genuine warriors, because even staged combat with real medieval weapons could be deadly if you didn't know what you were doing. Religious elements would permeate everything. Matches might begin with blessings from local clergy, and storylines would regularly incorporate themes of sin, redemption, and divine judgment. A heel turn might literally involve a character making a pact with dark forces, complete with elaborate rituals that blur the line between entertainment and actual medieval beliefs about good and evil. The crowd would genuinely pray for their heroes' souls, not just their victory in the ring. The touring circuit would follow medieval trade routes and seasonal patterns. During harvest season, shows would focus on farming communities, with storylines celebrating the virtue of honest labor. During winter, the circuit would move to larger towns and cities, where more elaborate productions could be mounted. Wrestlers would literally be traveling performers in the truest medieval sense, carrying their stories from village to village like wandering minstrels with muscles. Medical care would be provided by monastery infirmaries and traveling physicians who followed the circuit. These early wrestling doctors would use medieval healing techniques, bloodletting, herbal remedies, and prayer, to treat both real injuries and staged ailments that advanced storylines. A wrestler might dramatically recover from a curse through the intervention of a holy relic, creating miraculous healing narratives that audiences would discuss for months afterward. The merchandise would be incredible. Instead of t-shirts, fans would buy miniature weapons crafted to resemble their favorite wrestlers' signature armaments. Traveling blacksmiths would follow the circuit, creating custom pieces for wealthy fans. Children would play with wooden figurines carved to look like famous wrestlers, and taverns would serve special ales named after popular characters. The economic impact on local communities would be substantial, as wrestling events would draw visitors from hundreds of miles around. But perhaps most fascinatingly, medieval WWE would serve as a form of historical preservation. Just as modern wrestling draws from pop culture and contemporary issues, medieval wrestling would incorporate historical legends and folktales. Wrestlers might portray legendary figures like Roland, King Arthur's Knights, or Beowulf. These performances would keep ancient stories alive in the popular imagination, serving as both entertainment and cultural education for largely illiterate audiences. The climax of any medieval wrestling season would be the great tournaments held during major religious festivals. Imagine the spectacle of Easter Sunday at Canterbury Cathedral's courtyard, with thousands of pilgrims watching as champions from across Europe compete in elaborate morality plays disguised as wrestling matches. The winner wouldn't just claim a prize, they'd be seen as divinely blessed, their victory interpreted as a sign of God's favor that would influence politics and social standings across the continent. And thus, we arrive at our remarkable conclusion. Medieval WWE wouldn't just be entertainment. It would be a fundamental institution of medieval society, blending politics, religion, culture, and spectacle into something that shaped the very fabric of European civilization. In castle courtyards and monastery grounds under flickering torchlight and the eyes of saints, these theatrical warriors would have created memories that lasted lifetime, stories that became legends, and perhaps most importantly, a shared cultural experience that united people across the rigid class barriers of medieval society. The echoes of their staged battles might have influenced real history, proving that sometimes the most powerful forces in human civilization are the ones that exist purely to make us cheer, gasp, and believe in something greater than ourselves. If you've ever wondered how entertainment shapes society, just imagine what the medieval world might have become with a little more theatrical combat and a lot more dramatic storytelling.